hello everybody. We're actually going to start 5 minutes early, seeing as everyone is here and assembled. So for those who don't know me, I'm Charlotte Carrington Farmer. I'm an Associate Professor of Early American History at Roger Williams University. So you can hear my accent. They hired a British person to teach Early American History, which always makes me chuckle. So welcome this morning. I've only got one working hand. I have the great pleasure this morning of interviewing two really interesting people. And how it's going to work is I'm going to ask a few questions that are on my mind, and then I'm going to turn the questions over to you guys. So we're going to meet this morning Governor Samuel Cranston, and also the person that we're all really interested in today, Roger Williams. So welcome. So I'm going to start with my first question then. I'm going to ask both of you to tell me a little bit about yourself. So if you can tell me who you are, whereabouts you're from, a little bit about your background and what your family situation is. So perhaps maybe we'll start with Roger, if that's okay. Can I just check, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Just let me know if you can't. So Roger, can I turn over to you?
Right then. Good morrow. Good morrow.
Good morrow.
My name is Roger Williams. I was born in London many years ago. The records for my birth were well destroyed in the Great Fire of London of 1666. And since we don't celebrate such things, the yearly birthday is not celebrated. No one's quite sure exactly how old I am. But I grew up in London. My father was a merchant tailor. This is not someone that makes clothes and sells them. This is someone that makes the bespoke suits for those at Parliament and at court. My mother was an innkeeper. We were in a well-trafficked area of London, if you would. It's called Smithfield. The cattle auctions were held there. General assemblies were held there, and executions for religious heretics were also held there. This was just a couple of 100 meters from where I grew up. I caught the eye as a youth of the Chief Justice of England, Sir Edward Coke, and he did send me to Charterhouse School and then on to Pembroke College at Cambridge University. From there, I ran into, how does one say this, difficulties with the authorities in England, and sought my fortune across the ocean in the Massachusetts Bay Colony and also at Plymouth Colony. Ran into difficulty with authorities there, and in 1636 did strike out, and with God's providence did start this new settlement to the north of here, Providencetown.
We'll turn over to you now. I don't know if you would like this.
I am Governor Sam Cranston. I served this colony longer than anyone else. 30 times I stood before the free men of the colony of Rhode Island, and 30 times they voted me to run the colony. They put their trust in me. In some ways, I was born for this. My grandfather, Jeremy Clark, was a governor of this colony. My father, John Cranston, was a governor of this colony. My uncle, Walter Clark, was a governor of this colony. In the proper time, I married. Indeed, I married Mary Hart, this man's granddaughter. I had known her because his daughter, Freeborn, had married my uncle Walter Clark. All three of our families are intertwined. If you add it all up, from the moment of the beginnings of the colony with grandfather and great-uncle Roger here, to the day that I started my 30th term, the colony has been around for 80. 20 of that time, someone related to me has run that colony. We are Rhode Island. Roger and I share these connections. He is indeed my great-uncle by marriage. He is indeed my grandfather by marriage. But also, let me say this, we share the same mistress, the colony of Rhode Island. We live for it. I feel that he feels comfortable when he was able to hand this colony over to me. He was at my marriage to his granddaughter, and when he handed this colony over to me, he realized a new kind of man was needed to run the colony of Rhode Island, a political man, and that's what I was born to be.
Thank you so much. I'm going to come back to Roger first. It seems like you run into trouble or difficulties quite a bit. So I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about your religious persuasions and perhaps some of your new and dangerous opinions.
As a child in England, one had no choice but to be a member of the Church of England. Growing up, there were dissenters that I did encounter at many places, and the Church of England was a well-established church. Originally established by Henry VIII, reinforced by Elizabeth, his daughter, and reassembled, if you would, by James I, who had been James VI of Scotland. He's a great swearer and a liar. He did put a committee together to make his own version of the Bible. A great blasphemy it is. Upon going to Cambridge, there were many people there who were of a different sort, who wished to fix the Church of England and purify it, get rid of the trappings of the Roman Catholic Church, the sacraments, the saints' days, the paintings, the ornaments, the crucifixes, and bring it back to its true heart, based on Scripture. These people are mockingly called Puritans because they wish to purify that church. I did see hope with these people and did follow them for a while. And I came across the ocean to Boston in the Massachusetts Bay with others that sought the same. Governor Winthrop, a Puritan. And when I did see what they set up in Boston, I was heartily disappointed. For they were mimicking the English system, where you don't have to go to the King's Church, but you do have to go to theirs. I did leave, and went to Plymouth, for there was a different group. These are separatists. They do not wish to reform the Church of England. They wish to break entire from it, where each congregation is their own. No bishops, no cardinals, no hierarchy outside. They decide their own future. I did join with them for a period. Getting into disagreements with them, though, I went back up to the Massachusetts Bay to Salem, became a teacher there, and had some ideas to tell them. First of all, the minister should not be paid. That makes one a mercenary. You're doing it for the money. You should be a working member of the community and minister in addition to this. I'm a city boy. I do not know how to hunt or to fish. I am no farmer, but I know how to trade. So I made my living by trading English goods with the native peoples that live hereabouts. In the process, learned parts of their language. I declared, once I knew them and some of their language, I could see that this was their land, whether they put boundaries up or not. And I did write a letter to King Charles I, telling him he was committing a sin for giving away something that was not his to give. When he says English can have this land, put their flag on it and say it is now England, he's a liar and a thief. If you wish to live here, make a deal with the people that own the land, the people that are here first. These ideas did get me into trouble both in Plymouth and Salem, but the one that got me into the most was telling the magistrates that they may control what a person does, but not what they think or what they believe. That, each of your hearts, each of your consciences, is up to you. This was too much for them. They asked me to change my mind, and I did refuse. So they told me I must leave. I was ill at the time, so they gave me some time to prepare myself. But by the end of January, 1636, I was forced to leave in the heart of winter, for they were sending troops to put me on the next ship back to England. Hip-deep snow, freezing temperatures. I was forced to leave Salem, and without the aid of the Wampanoag hunting party, I would have froze to death. They did give me shelter during that winter. By the springtime, I'm getting a letter from Plymouth saying I must leave their territory. That's through God's providence I did find this place at the head of this bay and start the town of Providence. Once there, a group of us got together, saying that a separatist is not the right thing to do. Being a Puritan, as they call them, and trying to purify an existing group, you join it because it reflects your beliefs. I did believe that each and every individual should follow their own conscience. So I did help gather the very first Baptist church, where one is educated, knowledgeable, and chooses to join the church. I did at that point believe this. But a few months after seeing people interact the way they always do, I did see that no church was legitimate. The only legitimate one, established by Christ and the apostles, was corrupted by joining with Rome. Every other church is man-made. Man, by his very nature, is corrupt, so anything man makes is corrupt. We have Scripture. We don't need these organizations. That is the way I live my life here.
Thank you so much, Roger. I'm going to come over to Sam Cranston over here, and can you tell me a little bit about your approach to governing the colony, and perhaps a little bit more about your own religious persuasions?
Those two are tied together, unfortunately, and in part of my decision, my own personal relationship with God. And that personal relationship came from the very beginnings of my family coming here. We followed Anne Hutchinson to Portsmouth. Anne was thrown out as Roger was because she had the nerve to first off be a woman to speak out, but secondly to say that God's grace is resident in each and every one of us. You do not have to strive through a Puritan ethic to become in God's grace. You are born that way. This was heresy and she was thrown out. We followed her. And this very personal relationship with God has been my touchstone for my entire life, as it was my father's and my grandfather's. I governed the colony in a difficult time. It's important that I appear, at least to the Crown, to be following some of their rules, but at the same time must hold true to the beliefs that I have. And so I walk a tightrope. I indeed call myself, in respect, if you ask me what I was privately, I'd say I follow the Quaker faith. Because I believe in that very personal, individual relationship, me and God. That's all the Quakers are really all about. Roger has his difficulties with the Quakers for other reasons, but this personal relationship is what drives me. But I must also be an adherent to the King of England's church. And I have a pew number 1 in Trinity Church, that is supposedly mine. If a person like Bellamont or Dudley asks me, I will certainly tell them that I am sitting in the pew number 1 at Trinity Church each and every Sabbath. But in my heart, I follow the Quaker faith, because I do not believe, as Roger does, that church and government belong together. Religion is about a personal relationship between God and yourself. And that's all there is.
Well, I feel like I have to come back to Roger. I could see him shaking his head in disgust at you. Do you have something to say about the Quakers, Roger?
He's related to me.
He doesn't really like them.
George Fox did come to this colony, to Newport Town, to establish the Quakers here in this colony. I saw this as an opportunity, not to persecute him, but to talk to him, to debate him about the nature of this society of friends, as they say. They do not have service. They do not sit down and listen to Scripture. They sit down in a large room and wait for God to talk to them. This is not mocking their practice. This is not following Scripture. Not only is that is their service. They can have their service. It does not disrupt the community, but they do, as a group, disrupt the community. They refuse military service. They will break into government meetings. They will disrupt things that are going on around there. They run around naked, disrupting everything we try to do. Quakers are not fit for a straight society here. But, as with any group, they shall not be punished here. We will debate them. We will convince them by the truth of our words what is right. As far as government and religion, these two must be kept entire separate. For faith, your faith, and your faith should have no bearing on what the government does. You take the Jews, they will not eat bacon or ham. Do you wish that to be a rule here? religion, churches, should be like any other corporation. They can make their own rules for their own members. They can have taxes from those members to support that organization. They can have behavior that must be met. They can throw members out. They can admit members, but have no more control over what the government does than the people that make furniture or the people that make suits. They are a corporation, a corporate body. Keep them entire separate. People talk about Europe being Christendom. It is a blasphemy. For all of Europe has no soul. It's the people that have souls. A person may be a Christian, but a country may not.
Thank you so much. So what you're telling me, Roger, sounds wonderful, this lively experiment in soul liberty. But I hear bad things about Rhode Island, that it's Rogue Island, that it's the sewer, the latrina of the New World, that Rhode Island is a scum. And I wonder if you can speak about that. What are the problems here? I mean, I've heard that your next door neighbour were fighting the Varins, you know, you hate the Quakers. What's going on with Sam Gordon?
We do not hate the Quakers. There are many people here from different parts of the world that have come to this colony because it is a safe haven. To those in Massachusetts Bay, to Plymouth, to Connecticut, we are that latrine, if you would, Rogue's Island, if you would, because we have people from everywhere. The synagogue at Newport is founded by people from Brazil. They hear about this freedom and come here because here they may safely follow their faith. The Baptist church here, the native peoples. We do not control people's hearts here. Here, you may believe what you wish to believe, as long as it does not disrupt our society. Winthrop does not see how this is possible. That one must have a Christian state with Christian rules for there to be order in the society, and we are proving them wrong. So they condemn us for this. This is an experiment to see if people can come together from different backgrounds, different beliefs, and work together for their own mutual benefit. And I think we have made a good start.
Very good. Is there anything that you want to add, Samuel, to that?
Absolutely. Much of what Roger says is true. I also feel that there is much envy for our colony, for the natural features of our colony. Connecticut and Massachusetts use these words as a way to defame us all, because they really want that, the Narragansett Bay. They want the Narragansett. How many times has Winthrop Jr. decided that he owns the Narragansett country? He's come over, he's actually gone to England with people and blasphemed and lied to get the colony.
With Harris.
With Harris, exactly. We are talking about the Massachusetts Bay colony and the Connecticut colonies desiring, wanting what Rhode Island has. This is our place. We made agreements with the Narragansett people to stay here with that. That's what this is all about. It's about land envy. I swear to it, it's about land envy. As for piracy, it's something that I need. I'm from the merchant class. I need to keep the merchants happy. You say piracy, I say commerce.
Well, I mean, it seems like we should stay on this topic of privateering and piracy. I mean, it seems appropriate as we look out to the water here. I mean, is there anything you want to say about this Roger?
When you grow in England, you know there are pirates off the coast. Pirates from Barbary come up and raid shipping that's coming into England in the Channel. They are a hazard. Here in this colony, it was 1649 when we first heard about pirates in this area. I was in Providence, and I heard cannon fire. And apparently it was cannon fire coming from Newport. Think how quiet things are. But we thought it may be pirates, but it was not. It was a privateer, a Dutch privateer by the name of Blofeld. We thought it was Irish pirates, for they were raiding our commerce along the coast here. This Dutch privateer had captured a Spanish ship, it was, and brought it into Newport to sell it off. He was a privateer. He had a letter of marque from his their ruler, who was it, whoever it was in Holland, and unfortunately it was out of date, for the Dutch and the Spanish had settled their differences. So this is a pirate, a privateer. These are the things that are blurred in the lines here. The people of Newport purchased what was on the ship. They purchased the ship, gave him another ship to outfit, and Blofeld sailed down to the Caribbean, to Dominican Republic, to Jamaica, and to San Salvador. There are places in each of this that are named after him, Bluefields and Blofeld. But this is the beginning of something here. We're in the perfect place for ships of sail to leave Narragansett Bay and go to the south. Connecticut has a barrier in between itself and the open ocean. Long Island goes from New Amsterdam to here. To the east of us, there is not much but sandy shores, some small bays with sandy coves. This bay is a great sheltered anchorage, a great road, if you would. And from here, the trip to Bermuda is 3 to 4 days by sail. From Boston, to make that same trip, you must go outside of the Cape, outside of the islands and the shoals. There are streams in the ocean that you must go against to get to Bermuda. It is 7 to 10 days to get from Boston to Bermuda. From Bermuda, you have the southern colonies, you have the Caribbean open up in front of you. To ride back here, you ride the ocean currents and they bring you right into the bay. This is what they want. This is what they are jealous of. And Plymouth wishes the east side, Massachusetts wishes Providence, and Connecticut wishes this part to be theirs, so they may partake in this world trade that we own.
Do you want to speak a little bit more to that, Sam?
I want to speak to the hypocrisy. When the Crown needs someone, they're happy to write a letter of marque, call him a privateer, and let him go out and do his business. As Roger pointed out, if the letter of marque expires and they no longer need this person, this is a perfect excuse for them to take this man and hang him. Then they find another privateer that they need for a certain purpose. They write him a letter of marque and he goes out and does the exact same business. Again, this is something that they use against us. I have written letters of marque. It is part of the world. This is the way things are done. But the Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, Connecticut, and even England itself uses hypocrisy and uses this as a vehicle to get what they want, which is the bay.
Thank you. So I want to acknowledge that we're on Narragansett homelands and maybe move that to talk a little bit about both of your relationships with Indigenous peoples, not just the Narragansett, but perhaps with the Wampanoag, with the Pequot, with the Mohegan. Roger, can I start with you?
Where does one start with such a large topic? When I was sorely tossed from Salem in the middle of winter, it was no Englishman that came and helped me. It was no Frenchman and no Spaniard. It was one of the native peoples here. It was Wampanoag hunters that took me in. Osamequin, or Massasoit, as you know him, gave me a place to stay, made sure I was fed and sheltered in this horrid winter. He did give me land at the head of the bay, but that was within the Plymouth colony. Plymouth again tossed me out. I went across the Great River and I came to a place on the west side at the head of the bay, and did negotiate with Canonicus and Miantinomi, the leaders of the Nahigansuk. This was never a purchase. I did negotiate with them and say that now we will live as neighbors. That place that is Providence town is a resource center. If you look at any maps that have been drawn, roads that traverse this area go from Boston to New Amsterdam, go right through there. From Plymouth to the west, from the tip of the Cape Cod all the way through that very spot to the west. This is a place where Wampanoag, Narragansett, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts would all come when the salmon were running and have great feasts and games up on the plain. 100 people on a side fighting over a ball to get it across a goal line. That's the extent of the rules of this game. It is very vicious. But when you have people from 4 different places coming to the same place, even if some are related, there are bound to be differences, there are bound to be similarities. Children will fall in love, disputes will be settled, disputes will be started. This game is a way to let them exercise some of their excess energy, if you would. So these disputes are minimized. I could not have lived here without the Narragansett and the Wampanoag. It would not have been possible. They did support me, and I did act as intermediary for them with the other English, translating things, advocating for them with Winthrop and all the rest. This was an act of us being neighbors. Not one superior to the other, but we're here living in the same place. I did make my living by trading English goods with them, and they did give me food and fur so I could make a profit and survive while I was here. Became great friends with them. Great friends with many of them.
Can I actually just stay with Roger for a second and ask a follow-up question? So we all know that you worked really hard to learn the Narragansett language, so I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit about this. But I also want you to explain yourself a little bit. You once wrote that false conversion stinks in God's nostrils, but at the same, false worship stinks in God's nostrils. But you also once wrote before then that you long for native souls. So where do you stand on conversion to Christianity, and how does that impact why you learned the Narragansett language?
There are 2 reasons to learn someone's language. I did learn early on in London, as I was growing up, that if my father wished to go to the docks and get silks or fine cloth off ships from Italy and from Holland, he has an advantage if he speaks their language. An Italian ship comes in. If my father speaks Italian to them on board, the other English workers on the docks don't know that he's already made a deal for the entire cargo. I did take this lesson. For in London I did learn Italian, French, and Dutch. At school you learn Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. So when I came here and there was a people that lived here, that had access to all the resources, and I wished to trade with them, I knew that I must learn their language, for this was their land. There are secrets in a language that do not translate, if you would. It is never a word-for-word substitution. Here is an example. In English we have a sheet of paper. You also have a sheet of ice, a sheet on a bed. It's a large, square, flat thing that covers, yes? In French, it is not a sheet. It is a leaf, une feuille de papier. A leaf of paper. And if you look just around the corner in some of these trees just with us, a leaf floats. A leaf is a single part of something else. The entire concept starts off differently. And that is as it is with the native language here. Their entire look at the world is very different than an Englishman's look at the world. And it is reflected in their language. And unless you know this language, you can never speak to them from your heart. Now, you mentioned about religion. Yes, forced conversion stinks in God's nostrils, and the French and the Jesuits wish to go there and nail shoes on the bottom of the moccasin feet of the native peoples up in the northern provinces. This may increase their numbers, pouring water over their heads and nailing shoes on their feet, but not one of them is a true Christian. If I can talk to them, I can show to them the benefits of Christianity. My great heartbreak is the wisdom of the Narragansett, for they turn to me and say, go make the English good Christians first. They already behave and display behavior that looks to be entire Christian. They do share what they have with those that have less. They do take in people that have no place to go, like myself. It was the English that tossed me out into the wilderness. It was the native peoples here that took me in, like Christ in the manger. So it is my great heartbreak that they maintain their own religion. Yes, for I fear for them. But I cannot force them to change their behavior, for they're already behaving in the correct way.
Thank you so much, Roger. I come over to Sam then. What's your relationship with the different indigenous peoples within the area?
This is a good question, and the reality is that this, and this leads to Roger as well, this is the one thing that tormented my father on his last days. My father and the Clarks came with Hutchinsons to Portsmouth and Newport. This would not have happened without Roger's relationship with the tribes. He went to them and said, these are good people. Help them as you helped me. And they did.
Well, they had Cottington too.
But they weren't. Maybe we could say they were mostly good.
There we are.
And there was great relationships for many, many years. You might say generations, in fact. And then the terrible times came for my father, for Roger, for the people who had generations of good relationships with these people. We were swept up in this thing we had no control over anymore. And my father indeed was made to have a part in it all, as was Roger. This tormented him to the end of his days. And as I said, we felt powerless at this point. The world around us was swirling, and like a whirlwind, it swirled us up. It swirled the Narragansett people up. And in the end, we all know what happened.
Thank you. Yes, this is the moment I want to focus on. This particular moment, Roger looks kind of very upset about this in 1676, when Roger Williams is one of the men within Providence who enslaves Native Americans. Roger, can you talk to us a little bit about that very difficult decision in 1676?
I do not like this. I do not like this at all. We strived to prevent this war. It was June 1675. We had arranged for Governor Andros, I think it was, from New York to come here and act as a mediator between Philip and Plymouth. I did even write that looks like this storm has passed. And then blood was shed in Swansea, and the entire thing blew up. Philip and his warriors attacked and ran, but to do this, they must care for their old men, women, and children, did send them to live with the Narragansett. The Narragansett did take them in as refugees. It is now their honor to protect them. In October, Boston demanded that the Narragansett sign a treaty, that they would stay out of this war. And they sent delegations to Boston and signed this treaty willingly. They wished to have no part of this. The delegation had fair got back to this country, here, when one more demand was put upon them. Turn us over those Wampanoag as hostages to prove your good faith. These are their cousins. These are not strangers. These are people that they have promised their lives to protect. They're refugees. They are taken into their own homes. And now Boston is demanding their lives? The Narragansett were righteous in their anger and saying, no, not a Wampanoag, nor the paring of a Wampanoag's nail. This Boston took to its advantage. As we mentioned before, they want this land. The United Colonies, under that grand banner they made, Connecticut, Massachusetts Bay, and Plymouth, did invade the colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations against our King's Charter, did land here and march 12 miles inland and attack the Narragansett stronghold in the Great Swamp, killing 700 men, women, and children. At this, they angered the Narragansett, and Cananchett formed an army here of over 2,000 warriors. This United Colonies had 1,000 soldiers. Cananchett made 2,000 here and 2,000 in central Massachusetts and proceeded to drive out the English from the mainland of Rhode Island into Connecticut, wiping several of them out across the center of Massachusetts Bay until he himself was captured and executed. In this year and a half, everyone here lost something. English, native peoples, everyone lost something. Friends, relatives, houses, livelihoods. Everyone lost something. The English were driven mad. Groups of native peoples that had surrendered have their paperwork, they were just going home, were slaughtered by English soldiers. We did hold many native peoples as prisoners of war in Newport. What are we to do? Many just wish us to cut their throats where they stand. What are we to do? Anyone? Please help me. These are my friends. What do we do? It was settled to sell them down to the Caribbean. Preserve their lives and get them out of here. In war, sometimes there are no good choices.
This is the same question that tormented my father. What were we to do? What were we to do? He was in charge of the commission in Newport that signed the paperwork that sent these men to the West Indies. It's a horrible thing. And it's important to keep in mind the part played by the Smiths right here. Again, because of the envy for the land, Smiths decided that they were going to side with Connecticut. They felt certain Connecticut was going to end up with this, and they allowed this to happen. This place was where this all began, at the behest of Smith. All of it was horrible. As I said, it was a whirlwind that we got swallowed up by, and when the whirlwind settled down, we were left with what was left. And the answers were, what do we do now? Many English felt frightful of anybody being left behind who could reconstitute these tribes. One conversation had gone a different way across the Hudson River. Imagine what would have been. This is on our minds as well. What were we to do? What we had worked so hard to create was gone. Forever. Gone forever. We had to move forward.
Thank you both for your very thoughtful and thought-provoking answers. We have around 15 minutes now, and we've deliberately planned to have 10-15 minutes at the end to turn over to questions from you guys. So who wants to ask the first question to either both of us, our presenters, or just one in particular? Yes.
Well,
Can
I wanted to ask you for your views on the way the Massachusetts Confederation has treated your neighbors, the Narragansetts, over the years, before the war.
You must understand that the British come to a place and they wish to conquer. One of the first things that Massachusetts Bay was involved with was the Pequot War. The Pequot were a very strong people. I did not like them. I could see them dipped in their elbows, up to their elbows in English blood. They did not like the English at all. But they did see the threat that English here in this New England did pose for them. In hindsight, I see the way they worked with me to get the Narragansett and the Mohican to join with them against the Pequot. Once the Pequot were vanquished, there was one great military power in southern New England. One. It's the Narragansett. In the 1630s, we're talking 20 to 25,000 people. If you take a third of that, or maybe even less, that would be the adult male population. Boston has maybe 2,000 people total in the 1640s. Maybe 3. The Narragansett are the money makers, making the wampum, and they are the greatest military power here. Economic and military power. So Massachusetts was threatened. So every chance they took, they wished to play politics by trying to fragment the tribes around them and also to fragment the tribe itself. There are some great leaders that held things together. There are some great leaders that played the politics back on the English. Playing Native American against Native American, playing English against English, playing Plymouth against Boston, playing Connecticut against Massachusetts. There's politics involved throughout this area. But the Narragansett were the great power. And Boston was envious of this. They had to eliminate that if they wished to have this land for themselves.
I had a question about the Providence deed and the language about the use of the land between the two rivers.
That's not in the deed.
We've had it in class,
I know.
the transcription.
The transcription is not what is on the deed.
Yeah, so what is the actual intended language there, and what's, is it supposed to be exclusive or mutual, the use of the land?
The land use is mutual, but it has no language to such. That language about the extent of the two rivers is added to it by the Arnolds. It was not something agreed upon by the native peoples and us. It is a forgery that is taken down into the proper transcription that is official transcription for it. But that was not part of the agreement. They gave to me a portion of land that was from Patuxet to Newtoconkinut Hill to the falls at Pawtucket and backed by the Seekonk River. That was the gift that they gave to me.
So the Patuxet by Westerly?
No, Patuxet.
Not
Patuxet, just
Patuxet,
north of
right?
here.
Okay.
From the falls there,
Yep.
out to Newtoconkinut Hill, to the falls at Pawtucket, and then backed by the Seekonk River. And they did give this to me in consideration for the many things that we have done together. That was the terms of the deed.
And that's for exclusive use, if they wanted for the English?
It is open for them always. Their road runs right through the middle of it. It was never said to be exclusive at all. We are to be neighbors. That was the intent of this. And neighbors share things.
I have a question for Governor Cranston. Both you and Roger Williams have been leaders of this colony. I believe Roger Williams was president at one point. And you have the advantage of hindsight. Both of you look at Rhode Island as your mistress. What are the biggest differences in governing and leading your Rhode Island, or Rogues Island, or Haven for people of distress conscious, between your time and what Roger faced?
The increased need to be a political animal. That is my opinion. The increased need to be a political animal. There are more pressures now placed upon, especially with Belmont and Dudley, indeed changing this place to Rochester for a short period of time. And it's important that we keep our connections with the Crown. We secure the authorities given to us by the Crown through Roger and John Clark. But this requires a political man. Roger was was a spiritual man. And he lived his life as a spiritual man. I too am a spiritual man, but I understand the realities of the world. And I must also be a political man. These are the differences.
Could you speak, Roger, to the shortage of corn that was mentioned earlier in the introduction?
There are many people that live here that are not very good farmers. Food is always a necessity. And when you have a storm come through at the end of the growing season, all is lost. When we have a small town at Providence, we have a waterfront that provides us with food when the salmon run, when the apples do drop their fruit, or when, say, the oysters are there. That is a constant source of food. But as more and more people come here, when there is a failure in any of the crops, it's not like we have great stockpiles. There is always going to be some shortage, because people continue to arrive that did not get to plant this year. There is always a shortage of food here. And until we can have some sort of a store where we can have a great stockpile, there will continue to be. Now, the native peoples, their farming techniques are different than ours, and they do have great store of food. Sometimes we negotiate with them and can make deals. But as the years go on, there is less and less of ours that they need, but they already have it.
Thank you. We'll come to the back first.
Roger, is it true that you were a part of the committee that made decisions about the slavery following the...
That's what we just talked about at the end there.
Right. What? It's my understanding that some was sent to the Bahamas, some was sent to the Caribbean, South America. and some stayed in Rhode Island. Would you address how that happened?
Very few of the slaves, as native people, stayed here as slaves in Rhode Island. We learned the lesson from the Pequot War. After a year or so, they walk away. This is their land. They know it backwards and forwards. The purpose of sending them to the Caribbean was that they were far enough away that they won't be coming back. Some actually did go to England as slaves. Some went to Africa. They were dispersed across the landscape.
Roger, you were married and you had 6 children.
Yes.
You were also sent to England or went to England on your own any number of times, which was a long time being there.
Yes.
How did your wife and family survive emotionally and financially?
Mary is the most amazing angel you can imagine, and she is tougher than I think, on many parts. She ran the household as a business. She made money while I was away. She would not tell me how she did it. But here is a woman who is strong as iron, and I am lucky enough to be able to stand by her. She raised the kids, and as they are spread out in ages, the kids also raise the kids. There is plenty of work for any to do at the age of 5, and they must be responsible and taught lessons. I would be gone for 2 or 3 years, as you mentioned, a long time. My first trip I did ask if Mary wished to join me, but at the same time I discouraged it because this is a dangerous trip. You have a good chance of disappearing in the middle of the ocean, whether through mechanical failure of the ship or through pirates or whatever. She's amazing. She was my rock. Did that answer?
We have time for one more question. You, sir.
Roger, I was wondering if you could speak about your relationship with Samuel Gorton and the settlers in Shawmut.
There's a question.
Master Gorton!
You would do better as a Quaker. Let me put it that way.
Master Gorton was tossed from Plymouth, was tossed from Portsmouth. His behavior in Plymouth was amusing. At a trial, he did call the justices just asses. That's the kind of nature of man he was. He was trained in the law. When he came to Providence, he was refused admission, for he did not wish to submit himself to the judgment of the entire town, where we all decide things by the mutual vote, and the majority of that decides what's to happen. He said, I'm as good a person to decide my future as any of you are. So he moved to our border at Pawtuxet. Had arguments with the Arnolds, and who else was there? Harris, I believe, was there too. With cattle grazing rights, got into a gunfight over it. Moved further south to Shawmut. Made a deal with the Narragansett for that land there, so much so that it angered some of the locals, the local native peoples, and they did appeal to Massachusetts Bay to come help them. And Gorton was arrested there. Now, this is the outline of Gorton's life. But he was so much different from the rest of the English that the Narragansett had 2 words for Englishmen. They had the coatmen, and they had Gortonites. I believe Mr. Gorton at his heart has goodness. I believe many of the things he professes may be considered blasphemous. He denies the Trinity. He denies the divinity of the Christ. But at his heart, I think there is a good man there. I would have many good discussions with him if I could.
Excellent. So will you join me in thanking both Roger and Samuel? Thank you all for such wonderful questions and joining us this morning. I believe we now have a break for 15 minutes, so enjoy the sunshine and wander around. Thank you.